part of the more short term kind of like effects of the radiation, I guess you can say, is that it because it targeted your throat and like it literally like burned like your insides,
Mhm.
which I also think is why the skin drying occurs too.
Yes.
It caused so much scar tissue on the inside of his throat, and so that's why, or that's what caused his throat to close,
Mhm.
and that's why he wasn't able to speak and he wasn't able to eat.
Sorry. I still laughed.
Oh man, we were really gonna try this episode to not start it that way.
Anyways, let's just jump straight to the point. I am so excited that I am counting down my final days of working in a retail store.
Woohoo!
Yes, and I am slow. I like when I tell you I'm so excited, I could just jump out of my skin with joy.
I
So
bet.
excited. I am literally within, I think today was my eighth day. I have 7 more days after the
Oh,
shift. I don't know where I'll be when this episode release. Hopefully, I will be already working remotely,
how
but
exciting.
I don't know if that's going to happen. But either way, I will be days closer to being remote. Um, I never really envisioned myself to work remotely. I've always said that I wanted to do it,
Hmm.
but I never actually like pictured myself in the environment to be at home and working. So it's becoming a little more real, and
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just like anxious with excitement. I'm not anxious with like fear.
Right. Well, and you should be. You've been waiting for this moment for a long time. You've been waiting for change, and hopefully, it will be change for. It is going to be for the better because it's going to be things that make you happy. It's going to be a
Oh,
little
for sure.
less crazy of a schedule and things like that. And
For sure.
I was blessed with being able to work from home for a little bit during the pandemic.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, now I can't, but it was some good times. So I think that you'll enjoy it and you'll be able to get more stuff done, which is nice too.
Yeah, it's crazy because ever since my mom passed, I've been on like work only mode, like work, I gotta work,
Mm.
dedicated to my job. And not that I'm any less dedicated to my job, but I'm like burnt out from my job.
Yeah.
So the fact that I finally made it to a place in my life where I'm okay with taking a pay cut to get a job that I have to work less hours, but with the same company, and I
Right.
get more time back to myself.
That's huge.
That's a really big thing. And for me, it felt like a really big step because it's something that I've contemplated for a while.
Mhm.
I have some forces behind that as to why I have to do it, or, make me feel more obligated to finally make that change.
Right.
But when I look at the big picture and I'm looking literally like pay versus happiness,
Mhm.
I'm like, damn girl, you've been letting that pay just overtake your happiness for far too long. And especially with, I don't know if are we still in a pandemic? I'm not really sure.
Yeah, I would say so.
We technically are, okay.
Mhm.
Well, with saying the environment that we're living in and the quality of life right now, that I can't sacrifice my happiness any longer. And
No.
I started to realize that in 2020, but never actually did anything about it. I would just take more hikes and get more fresh air, and
So you really
that
could do.
right, but that shit only held me over for so long.
Mhm.
It was just okay, but then after a while, it became less exciting to do those things,
Yeah.
and then it just turned back into the old hustle and bustle. Because
Right.
with the pandemic, when that like was announced as COVID in what February, March of 2020, I wasn't even in my newly promoted role for a whole year yet at that time.
Oh, wow.
So it really ruined things for me.
Yeah.
I didn't get the experience that I've been training and seeing.
Mhm.
I only had that for a good 9, 10 months.
Mm.
And then it went left, and everything that I used to know as how the role is supposed to go changed because with retail and with life, you shift and you have to change shit up and
Right.
go with the flow or you're gonna fucking drown. So, you know,
That's
I
the
didn't get
truth.
I didn't get the full experience of what I was really working towards, and I realized that, you know what? That's okay because if this is how it is now, I got to go.
Definitely, and that you are.
Yeah, so
So,
I'm telling you, people, you speak it into the atmosphere and it will happen. My patience has been tested. I've been so anxious. Like, I just have had so many emotions. I've been bitter, but that's just me. When I'm frustrated, I become bitter
mm,
and I don't like anything anymore. I don't like people. I don't like this. I don't like that. But I'm a firm believer that if you put it into the atmosphere and you truly believe you're going to receive it and you add a little patience to it,
mm,
it'll eventually come, especially if it's something that you're meant to have. And
yes.
that's how I feel about this situation.
Yes, because it is all about that mindset, baby. You just have
Mindset
to
talks.
really, really think about it, and I just think it's pretty cool, especially now that, like, all of this whole experience has been recorded since we started, you've been talking about it and things, and now
Yes.
it's actually coming into fruition, and I just think that that's so cool.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I just had to bring it up again because it's something that's keeping me afloat these days, and with as good as it is, it's making these last days of work a lot harder.
Sure it is. You'll miss
I
it, though. You might get a little stir crazy after a while, but
I'll definitely miss my coworkers. I can't say that I'm so close to everybody, but there's a lot of people that I really, do respect that I work with and that I will miss just having our own conversations and just keeping up with them.
mhm.
Not that I'm going to be giving my number to everybody because I sure ain't, but it's just crazy. Like every day now I go to work and a new person's like, "Oh, I heard you're leaving." "Oh, I heard you're leaving." "You're leaving us? Where are you going?" "Oh, you didn't come and tell me you're leaving. I had to find out from so and so." And I'm like,
Mm.
"Wow, I didn't even realize y'all cared that much?"
Right.
But it's just one of those you don't know until you're gone how people really feel about you and
Yeah.
but I knew most people respected me. Like that wasn't in question. So,
Right, right.
but yeah, so now I'm like, if something negative happens at work, I'm like, see, this is exactly why I'm leaving. I'll use any excuse at this point. Oh, someone tripped and fell, messed up our days of safety. See, that's exactly why I'm leaving.
Oh gosh.
Like, I'll find anything. Customer
Being
complained.
stupid.
Oh, nope, that's why I'm leaving. So I say it jokingly, but there are reasons why I'm leaving, just so y'all know. There are actual reasons. But anyways, I just had to kind of start off this episode with a highlight in my life, and especially since everyone has been listening to what I've been going through, as you said,
Mhm.
I had to keep everyone posted on the good news.
Yes, definitely. It's a huge thing going on in your life right now, and it couldn't come at a more perfect time. So
Girl, you ain't lying.
I'll say that.
You ain't lying. Anyways, enough of me. How can I ask, since
Uh-oh.
we're keeping up to date
You're
on
not allowed to ask anything.
what do you mean?
I don't know. You just make me nervous. I don't know what.
Mindset talks. You set yourself up for this.
Did
If
I?
if you're on an episode with me, you're open fire for questions, and it's nothing crazy. Gosh,
Did I make you forget what it was?
nope.
Uh,
So yeah, nice try. Um, so I wanted to ask, do you have any updates on either how you're doing with eating before podcasting, and or with being more personable at work?
um, no and no.
Yeah, dog.
Listen, okay, the whole eating before we podcast thing is a little complicated unless, like, I run to the kitchen as soon as I get home and, prepare and stuff like that, or we, like, podcast, like, super late, so, I don't know. It's just kinda hard to work it into the schedule, but being personable, hmm, nope, nope, not too much. I can't because it's not like your job. I don't have, like, constant interaction with people at work like that, so it's really
Lucky. You're so
hard.
lucky. No playing.
It's kind of hard to, like, give myself those opportunities, so, I mean, still a work in progress. I guess we'll just kind of see how it goes.
Okay. Well, I'd just like to throw out a challenge as my last request.
Oh,
Um
joy.
to be of support in that. because I'm always here to support you regardless of what it is, unless I really disagree.
Mhm.
Um, that maybe you take a moment to stretch your legs from your desk and go and check in on someone and ask how they're doing. Okay, cool, thanks.
Um, yeah, I don't know, maybe.
Just say, talk about the
Well,
weather. It's been getting nice lately.
yeah, that's true, but so, I mean, there's obviously, like, people in my building, but, like, the people that, like, are my employees and stuff, they're spread throughout the city, so
Oh,
sometimes it's a little hard to just, like, walk on over there.
you're right. Okay, I got you. I got you.
But not that's not to say that there's not people that I could talk to, but,
Okay. All
I'll try.
right. All right. We'll keep an eye out for that. I'll remember at some point. Give
Yes,
me a couple months. I'll remember to ask you.
fortunately, you will.
Damn.
Just kidding, I'm just kidding, this is something I need to work on, so challenge accepted, okay?
Okay. Thank you. So, anywho, I know you're. I like to call you the mastermind of our episodes, and
Oh god.
I just wanted to allow you the opportunity to jump in on what we have for our people today.
Yeah, so, we are still in the month of April, and this episode will also air in April. So I was just trying to rack my brain and think about things that we could talk about that are related to the head and neck cancer for the awareness month and, have your experiences tie into that a little bit as well.
Hmm.
So what I was thinking was I know we've kind of like brushed upon the topic and we've mentioned things here and there, but I think it might be helpful to some people if we really try to go into a little more detail about the effects of cancer treatments.
Okay.
So I think between the two of us, our parents have experienced a like wide range of treatments and things, and just cancer in general.
Hmm.
So I think it would be helpful for people to hear, maybe it's something that they're contemplating on doing, or trying to figure out like what to expect, or, whatever the case might be. So I think it might help a little bit to see where the conversation goes to just kind of get into like the nitty-gritty.
Okay. Well, if you want, I'll jump into it. Um,
Sure.
I feel like with my mom, she had, I would call them common or typical types of reactions to going through like chemo radiation type of
Mhm. So she
treatments.
had both?
She had both.
Mm.
She had both. Um, her hair loss was a big thing. Her hair thinned out and just vanished, I guess is the best way to put it.
Mhm.
Um,
So she completely lost all her hair or no?
yeah, she went bald. She had like little peach fuzzies on there, but
Oh.
she lost her hair. Which she already had a short cut anyways.
Mhm.
So it's not like my mom lost this
It was like drastic.
full head of beautiful hair that hung below her shoulders and wallowed in the wind. I don't know. My mom, she had a shortcut. She had a fade for the most part. Fade
Gotcha.
with a little high top. She loved her haircut.
Yeah.
So, she did lose all of her hair, so she did end up wearing hats a lot, which my mom wore hats before anyways.
Mm.
Sometimes, like she was kind of on and off with hats.
Mhm.
So it wasn't like a new style really for her in the sense of having to wear a hat. She just wore hats more often.
Gotcha.
But she didn't seem to be like insecure about not having any hair. I mean, this is the same woman who had a mastectomy and walked around the house with one boob on her chest. So I don't I don't think she was highly affected by her hair loss.
Right.
But she also did wear a hat often because her head was cold. So
Mm.
her head was covered either way.
Gotcha.
Um but that was one of the first major changes. Her hair did grow back though. It like was coming back in like straight hair.
Mhm.
Like I don't want to say they always say, but from her and what I've experienced with other people is that their hair when it grows back, it's like baby hair. Like it's nicer hair than the hair they had prior to cancer. Excuse me, prior to treatment, which is a
Mm.
little weird, but I'm like,
Interesting.
okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, so she had suffered hair loss. But I want to say that was with the radiation, if I'm not mistaken, or is it with the chemo? I honestly can't remember. It makes me a little concerned that all of it's so blurred and I can't put a timeline to it.
It's hard.
Right, but if I look at pictures, I can put a timeline to it.
Mm,
But, the main thing that really stuck out to me was her weight loss.
mm,
Um, she was already a toothpick to begin with, so that
yeah,
was just kinda hard.
right.
And then, with treatment, she just became thinner. Her appetite had changed,
Mhm.
so she wasn't as like, my mom was a snack machine, like, she she used to eat all the snacks, she'd be eating all the time, like, as a kid, I would not sleep with her because she had crumbs in her bed. Like, because she was always snacking, like, "God damn, woman, not even your bed is a safe zone."
Right.
So, I just remember that the most, like, that's the most prominent in my memory
Mhm.
of the weight loss that she had went through, and then her skin was so dry.
Yeah.
I remember she kept,
Like, all over or
I don't know how far, like, I didn't really, like, I just remember in general her skin, like, her hands and arms, I think her legs,
gotcha.
like, she just had dry ass skin. So, I remember she always, like, kept lotion, kept herself, as well moisturized as she could, especially coming right out the shower.
Mhm.
But I just always remember that she, uh, always kept, like, this nice tube of lotion with her because of just how dry and how quickly her skin would get dry. I
Mm.
don't know if that's a common effect. Do you know?
So from my experience, that is an effect of the radiation,
Right.
because in my dad's situation, his cancer was in his throat, and so that's where all the radiation
Mhm.
was focused when he went in for his treatments,
Mhm.
and his entire neck was completely dry and, like, flaky,
Yep.
and I remember just sitting there and lotioning his neck and stuff and just, like, seeing just, like, all the, like,
Flakes of skin.
flakes, yeah, and it was just
Mhm.
it was the grossest thing, but let me tell you, moisturizing that was probably, like, one of the most important things to do because it
Yes.
really didn't look that bad, like, after everything was completed.
Mhm.
So, I would just say for, like, a tip is making sure that you stay up on moisturizing, whether you have to do that for them or just,
Yep.
annoying them to do it themselves, but
Mm.
that was definitely huge. It was gross, but, you had to do what you had to do, and I'm
Exactly.
glad that I did it, so
Yeah. I didn't have to necessarily lotion her. Sometimes I helped my mom with, like, administering meds at times, but that wasn't due to, like, the chemo or radiation.
Mhm,
Um, but another thing I do remember is her appetite change. There were, like, certain things she just wouldn't eat or, like, couldn't eat.
mhm,
So, um, that was a little bit different because, like I said, my mom was like snack machine. She was like Cookie Monster, eat everything and just go ham. So seeing her with, like, I guess, a reduced diet
mhm.
was really
Weird,
odd,
yeah.
you know. And then of course being lethargic, how
Mm,
tired she was, and that was another heavy hitter because my mom was full of energy all the time. She was the life of the
definitely.
party. Like, she
Definitely.
made me tired with the energy she had, you know?
Yeah.
And to see her be so lethargic and so tired was, for me, even though it's not the right thing to say, I feel like it made me feel like she was dying
Mm,
because of how tired she was.
yeah,
Because it was so foreign for me to see her so, like, lethargic and down like that, that I
right.
automatically just felt like that was a symptom of dying. Not a symptom of treatment, but a symptom of dying, like, I took it there mentally, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So that was hard, but I remember her, fingernails turned black, like, they, like, darkened. They didn't turn black,
Mm,
but, like, her fingernails had, like, a darker hue to them.
really?
Yeah, it was really weird. I don't know why I just now remember that, but it's like she spoke to me and was like, "Hey, don't forget about my fingernails real quick."
Right.
You know? It was just so weird. I'm like, "Why do I remember her fingernails being they were darkened?" It was really weird.
Mm, that is
And
weird.
I think they might have been a little harder, like, they were kinda like claws. Not like to be like an asshole to say they're like claws, but, like, they hardened.
Right.
But yeah,
I
that's
wonder.
that's the extent of what I remember. sometimes I feel terrible that I can't remember more or like more specifics to it, but that's also I think my defense mechanism of
Definitely.
I'm not going to say it's denial, but it's just if I I guess it's denial. If I don't remember it, didn't happen,
Exactly. Yeah.
that type of thing. So, but
Same.
consciously I don't do that with intent, but I'm sure subconsciously it's happening.
Yeah, of course. You have it's kind of like your response just to, like, all the trauma and stuff because
Mhm.
I tell you, I can't really remember much of anything, but, like, my mom will say something and I'll be like, "Oh, shit, like, yeah, that did happen." Or,
Mhm.
I've mentioned a few times that I've been contemplating, like, this book and stuff, and if I didn't write all of this stuff down, like, right after it had happened, like, there's
What
no
would you
way.
remember?
Yeah, there's no way. So,
Well, with your memory, I hate to say it, but
I mean, and yeah, that makes it worse.
yeah, like that doesn't help the situation at all. But
No.
at the same time, sometimes we pick and choose what we remember without realizing that we're picking and choosing. So,
Mhm. That too.
mhm. So
So
what were your experiences like with your dad? Did you have anything um similar occur with him that occurred to my mom?
Well, definitely the drying of the skin,
Mhm.
as mentioned. He like I had said, I don't know, in some episode before, he did most radiation treatments. He only went through the one session of chemo. He was supposed to go through, I don't even know, like many more than that, but
Mhm.
he couldn't handle it at all whatsoever. Excuse me. And
It never fails.
it doesn't. And
I
this
think
is
that's your
why
dad's sign that he's with you. Like it has to be because it makes no damn sense. We literally, I'm sorry, but we literally talked before recording and you didn't even have uh like nothing in your throat. Like there was just nothing.
no,
But until
it
we start recording, I swear it's like your dad's sign of like, oh, by the way, I'm here.
is. It is. It's the weirdest thing, and this is why I always think something is wrong with me. It's so weird.
I'm so
Um,
sorry.
but anyways,
The one round of chemo.
yes. So after that happened, he had to be hospitalized just because it really, like, knocked him on his ass, and I forget, there was, like, a specific, like, term for it or something, but basically they had to hook him up to, like, all these, like, IVs with, like, vitamins and nutrients and stuff to, like, replenish his body back with everything just because, like, it really, like
Knocked him down.
yeah,
Wow.
it was definitely a scary time, and there's no way I don't think there's any way he would have been able to survive more than one, chemo treatment.
Round of that. Oh, I
Yeah,
couldn't imagine. Oh,
just no way. I think the radiation definitely just kind of, like, took a big enough toll as it was, and his immune system was just, like, completely shot, and that chemo just fucking I think I think they call it, like, cisplatin or whatever in the chemo, like, that's, like, the kind of chemo whatever he received, and
okay.
that shit was just not happening, so thankfully we were able to stop that, but to get back on track, part of the more short term kind of like effects of the radiation, I guess you can say, is that it because it targeted your throat and like it literally like burned like your insides,
Mhm.
which I also think is why the skin drying occurs too.
Yes.
It caused so much scar tissue on the inside of his throat, and so that's why or that's what caused his throat to close,
Mhm.
and that's why he wasn't able to speak and he wasn't able to eat for a year
Right.
from when he started the treatment. So those are definitely, parts of the side effects, and, obviously that won't happen with everybody that goes through radiation. It really depends
Correct.
on where it's being targeted.
Yeah, and how
Um
bad it is too, the cancer that the area they're treating.
Exactly, and you gotta think, they had to kill a lemon-sized tumor, so they had to really,
Put
like,
in work.
fire that up, so he lost his voice completely, he wasn't able to speak a word, he wasn't able to eat anything, and some of the longer term effects for him was it completely, like, damaged his gums and, like, his teeth.
Mm.
So his teeth started falling out, and because his immune system
Oh.
was shot, like, he couldn't really get, like, dentures or anything like that just because there
Right.
was really nothing for it to,
Hold
like
on to.
yeah. So that made it harder for when he was actually able to eat again because his teeth weren't what they used to be. So
Mhm.
chewing and things like that became a lot more difficult. And that was just kind of something that he had to learn how to adapt with because that was his new quality of life at
Right.
that point. Um, so he definitely went through it with all of his like side effects and things that just kind of like stayed with him forever. Um,
I mean, it was an aggressive
yeah,
sized amount of cancer in a delicate area. I mean, granted, every area of our body is delicate to some degree, but
right.
that was that was rough.
Yeah. And even once he was able to start swallowing again, every, I don't know, couple of weeks, and then it went to months and stuff like that, he had to get his throat stretched because
Mm.
all of that scar tissue would just keep like building itself back up. And so
Yep.
his throat basically like started closing again.
Closing. Oh,
So they had to, slowly like open it up. And it wasn't I
how'd they
wouldn't
do that?
so they pretty much the thing that they put through your nose with the little scope to, like, see what's going down there, they have one that's similar to where it kind of just, like, gets wider.
Sorry, because I can't even like just the thought. I'm sorry. I just the thought of anything going up the nose just automatically hurts my feelings.
It hurts your feelings. It's not painful, but it is extremely uncomfortable. It's, like, the weirdest. Have you ever had something like that happen to you?
No,
Oh.
and I don't plan to.
So, one of the times that I went to go get checked out at the ENT because I was, like, having, like, a complete, like, panic attack.
They have to
I
put
had
me
them
down. I mean, they have to put me out.
no, they spray, like, numbing spray in your nose, and they just shove it up there.
Nope, you've told me about that before, and it's still not an option. Excuse me, I'm gonna need some anesthesia if you're gonna be sticking anything up my nose, and thank you.
Well, that's kinda cool too, because then you can, like they have, like, a little TV screen over
I
there
don't
that you
wanna
can
see.
just, like, see
They can
the
record it and play it later. Like, this is what we got video for on the phone.
they
We'll watch
can
it later.
turn it too, but,
What?
they can turn it so you don't have to see it, but they obviously need to see what's,
No,
going
they can just put me under, do what they need to do, record it. I'll
on.
watch it later.
Well, one of the worst things is when my dad had to go back in the hospital a time, and they had to put the feeding tube through his nose. That was, I'd rather have the scope go in than a feeding tube, I'll just put it that way.
Wow. So they put this thing through his nose, and then once it gets down to his throat, they can make it expand.
Yes, to get back on track. Yeah. So they're able to make it expand, however they have, like, the different, like, diameters and stuff that they use it for.
Ooh,
And
child.
the important part there is that you don't wanna make it too big or do it too fast because then you can tear your throat, and you don't want that to happen. So it was always a little, like, nerve-wracking going into it, but it was pretty routine for them to do it, and they knew what they were doing, and it helped him every time. Like, it after the fact, it just felt more of like a sore throat. It didn't
Mm,
really, like it wasn't painful necessarily. Um, it
just
was
a lot
just
of discomfort.
yeah, definitely.
Oh gosh, girl.
So, he went through that, um, and also with the radiation because, again, where it was being directed, it kind of eventually messed up with his hearing a little bit.
Mm,
He didn't go completely, like, deaf or anything like that, but it definitely became harder for him to hear as, like, time went on.
who would have
Um,
thought, right?
yeah. So, he definitely had a lot of different, side effects from the chemo and the radiation.
Yeah,
Obviously, more so the radiation. And I would say it was more short term than long term.
gotcha.
But it is things that you definitely have to consider if you're the one that's having to make that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And in his case, was it things that like he wanted? No, nobody wants to experience that,
Oh, of course not. That's a big decision to make too when you make that decision.
Right. But at the end of the day, it saved his life. So,
Right.
you know,
It's either saving lives or at least extending the quality of life for most people.
yeah.
Or I can even say for most people, for people.
Hmm.
Whereas for other people it can be more damaging
Mm,
because their bodies can't take it or,
right.
you know,
Yeah.
it sucks because you really don't know which way it's going to go and you don't know how anyone's going to react to anything. That's not natural stuff for people to go through.
No.
So It's not like, "Oh, let me just use some homeopathic type of way and have probably not as bad effects versus something that's very powerful."
Right, no, it's, like, intentionally made to just, like, destroy all of your insides to kill the cancer, so
Pretty much, and everything else gets sacrificed with it.
right.
Eh. You know, it's crazy because I was thinking while you were talking that, I don't forget, but I don't put into the forefront of my mind a lot of the times that, my grandmother's cancer was the first cancer I dealt with
Mhm,
personally,
yeah,
and I didn't have a lot once again, I wasn't as involved with hers as my mom's, like, I was involved with, the caregiving at home
mhm,
when my grandmother started to really go downhill, but, um, I realized that my grandma, she was very tiresome too after her chemo appointments, and,
yeah.
that she used to have me chauffeur her around, and she used to want to pay me money to drive her places, and I'm like, "Grandma, you don't have to pay me." She's like, "You better take this
Right,
damn money and shut up." And I'm like, "Okay, thank you." But it was just like, and I think it's just because, looking back at it now, I was her granddaughter doing that. I wasn't one of her kids. I was her granddaughter. Like,
right,
I didn't have to do that, but I always felt like I was one of her kids because of, growing up in her home and her helping my mom with raising me. So
mhm,
I didn't feel like I was going out of my way ever to transport her back and forth to different places if she needed it. Oh,
right.
she wanted to go to the grocery store, then I'd take her. Like, if I have nothing going on, I was just glad for the fact that she was comfortable with riding in the passenger seat of my car, you know?
Right.
But
Well, and she's family, and you lived together. I feel like it'd be
yeah,
different if maybe you didn't or something, but
I honestly don't think that would have made a difference. Like, that was
no.
my grandma, you
Yeah.
know? Like, I've just always been raised with, respect to your elders. And, you know, granted, I was raised to be like obedient, I like to say, but,
Mhm.
I just never really questioned doing anything for her because why would I?
Right.
So that was really my first experience with someone going through chemo and being involved.
Gotcha.
Yes, Hante.
Yeah.
But
Uh,
what do you know of, like, what other types of treatments there are aside from like chemo and radiation when it comes to cancer? Because myself, those are the only two things I'm actually familiar with. And I remember when my mom was, going through it, and when actually remember specifically being at Yale Hospital when you were texting me this, and that you had mentioned another type of therapy, and you're like, look into it. There's other different kinds. It's not just, chemo and radiation.
mhm.
There's something else, but I can't remember what it is now. But do you remember?
Yeah, so before I get into that one though,
Okay.
so the other thing that is, I don't know, kind of obvious, but, like, not so obvious is surgery.
Mm,
So
true.
that's
Yeah.
kind of something else that I was thinking too, because that's also something that my dad had experienced.
Right. That's
Um,
true. My mom too.
take his word with a grain of salt, but he always swore that once air gets into it, it just spreads like wildfire,
It's the
and,
truth.
I don't really want to say it, but in our situation, that turned out to be kind of true.
Yeah. Sorry. I said it before you didn't want to say it.
No, you're fine.
Yeesh.
But so basically when it came to that, he had 2 different surgeries about, like, maybe, like, a year apart from each other, and so the first one was definitely the more, I don't know, I don't why they're both, like, extremely major. They're, like, 8-hour-long procedures, and it was just a fucking
Mm,
nightmare.
right.
But basically the first one was when he got his trach. So basically when I say that, I mean that they, um, poked a hole, like, in the bottom of his neck, basically, to where that was going to be his new way to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I'm trying to think about why they did that. Um,
So you could breathe.
oh, no. Well, yes, but breathing wasn't the issue. It's because when it came back the 11 years later, it showed up on his vocal cords. So
Gotcha.
they had to extract that cancer,
Yep.
which is why after that surgery was, well, I guess technically before that surgery happened was one of the last times I ever heard my dad's voice,
Mhm.
because they had to remove the cancer, which they did do successfully. They were able to, remove it with what they say clean margins,
Mhm.
but it took his voice, and it was a whole new way of learning how to do things because you weren't breathing out of your mouth any longer. You're breathing out of like this hole in your neck, and we had to
Right.
learn how to clean it, and all these challenges and things that came with that was definitely a learning process. So I mean, I guess the side effect that you would say from getting a laryngectomy is not having a voice.
That's a big thing.
So now he, had the trouble eating and swallowing and stuff for 11 years, and now it's like, "Oh, but
Mhm.
now you can't talk and you can't say anything ever again." So, that was definitely a hard one. Thankfully, we were kind of like 2 peas in a pod, so no matter what kind of a situation we were in, I can always read his lips, which I still feel like it's kind of like the weirdest thing, but, like, I don't know. We
That's
were
a
just,
real
like,
bond. That's a real
totally in
bond.
sync to where, like, you know, someone would be, like, talking to him and stuff, and he would, like, try to say something, and I would, like, kinda, like, be, like, his voice for him.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. That was just,
But
like
that's real love and that's a bond when you're that close to someone.
yeah.
How can you not, you know?
Yeah, I guess that is true. Um, so that was a new and a different thing to get accustomed to.
Mhm.
And then for his second surgery, which is when he had his glossectomy or partial glossectomy, which is when they had to remove a part of his tongue.
That was the one
Um,
that was less successful, right?
yes, because when they went in to do that, they had noticed that it was spreading. Um, it was on his external carotid artery, which they were able to remove that because there's 2 different carotid arteries. There's one of them that's, like, your lifeline, and there's another one, I guess, that you don't really, like, need as much or
Like a kidneys.
kind of to where, like, you can remove it and it won't really, like, affect you too much or whatever.
Mhm.
I don't remember, like, all the details and stuff about it at this point, but they were able to, like, remove that, but there was still just so much cancer. I just remember the doctor getting on the phone and just telling us that they weren't able to successfully, you know, get it all out with the clean margins that they had the first time around.
Yeah.
Um, so that was a nightmare. Um, and I mean, obviously the side effect from that is that he lost part of his tongue. So that was just the biggest struggle for him trying to learn how to eat again and swallow and things like that,
Just
but
right.
him and being determined, he refused to get, like, the feeding tube and all this
Mhm.
stuff, and there's just so many different things and parts, and I feel like I could just, like, ramble on forever, but the big takeaway from that is that the eating was a different struggle because he didn't have part of his tongue, so,
Yeah. That's a big thing, especially of course with head and neck cancers.
yeah, it's just not a good thing to have ever. Um
Right.
But to circle back and get back to what you were asking about,
Mhm.
which is something that I'm upset that my dad wasn't able to do it. He was actually in a clinical trial to be able to get this, which is the immunotherapy.
That's what it was.
Um, I was really excited for him to get into this trial. It wasn't guaranteed he was going to be one of the ones to actually receive it.
Mhm.
But basically, what it is the doctors use your own, like, immune system, like your white blood cells, to basically attack the cancer that's in your body. So they're not injecting any kind of drugs, they're not, using all these, like, lethal chemicals and things like that. They're using your own body's, like,
Mm.
defense mechanism to
Yep.
fight off the cancer. They add, whatever whatever kind of codes and things that they need to within that sample and inject it back so that way your cells know how to fight that cancer.
That's pretty cool.
So I think that I'm pretty sure that that is successful in, a lot of, people's, like, situations. I think that it's more of a thing now than it was, just 5 years ago.
Mhm.
But I don't know how, like, common it is, if it still just has to be a clinical trial or if you can actually, like, go in and, like, just get immunotherapy, that I'm not too sure because obviously I haven't had to really, like,
Right.
look into it lately,
Right.
but yeah, that was something that I suggested to you for your mom.
That's kinda like the homeopathic route, you know? It's
Yeah.
the more natural route, which for myself today, that's how I do things.
Mhm.
Um, I definitely would if I had to go back down the cancer route, knock on wood, that I don't, have to endure anyone I know to go through that, but,
Yeah.
um, I would say I would put a better effort into looking at that, but though that sounds so good that I feel like insurance wouldn't even cover it if it was a
Who
you know what I
knows?
mean? If
Probably
it
not.
was a thing they can do, so
Yeah.
it it's just crazy. Well,
Yeah.
but thank you for sharing that
Yes, I'm
because I
glad that
definitely
you
forgot what it was called.
Yeah. Well, 'cause I think that it was still such a new thing, that's why they were doing these, like, clinical trials and stuff, so,
Yep, very true.
yeah.
Wow, girl.
But yeah. So, definitely, a lot of side effects when you go through, the certain treatments and things that they have out there and just
Correct.
experiencing the disease in itself, but it really is just up to the person going through it, and even the support system around them too, to just research, know all your facts, understand exactly what it is that you're getting yourself through. Because I feel like a lot of times
Yes.
for us, it was just like, "You have this cancer, we need to do this, like, right now to,
Mhm.
solve everything and whatever," and sometimes you don't really have a time to think about it,
Right.
which can be a good and a bad thing. Because 'cause I'm pretty sure if my dad, like, really sat down and thought about half the shit that he went through, he might not have done it.
Right.
So I don't know. It's really up to the person, and I guess my best advice would just be to really research it, understand to a point what it is you're getting into because some of these things, as you've just heard me describe, can be a true game changer in your quality of life. And
Exactly.
I feel like you have to ask yourself that question, like, is this something I'm like willing to live?
Do or sacrifice, and
Yeah.
it's so crazy you said that I literally was just thinking the quality of life is going to help to make a true determining factor of, what route to take when it comes to treatment or no treatment or just how to handle situations in general.
Mhm.
That is really the pressing question and how you're going to answer that. And that, in my opinion, can help you get to the determining factor of what you're going to do or what you're not going to do. But
Yeah.
and also, again, to piggyback off of what you said, to look into, these decisions that you're making. Look at your pros and your cons. Definitely look at all options. Even if you know off rip that's not an option you want to take, still look at it
Yeah.
because even though we may think we know everything about something, there's always more to it. And it just allows you to just be more aware of what you're getting into.
Yeah, exactly, and don't be afraid to get a second opinion.
Hmm. That's the truth, especially nowadays.
Yeah,
Woo! That was
so
a mouthful.
yeah, I would
Yes.
say so. A lot of memories that you don't like to remember, but,
Yeah, that's very
one
true.
one man's knowledge is another one's wisdom. I just
All right.
That makes sense?
You're not the philosophical one in the group here, but I
I thought that
appreciate
I
the
was.
attempt. I appreciate the attempt. Oh my
Uh,
gosh. So do you have anything else to share with our folks before we wrap up this episode?
nope, I think that was my greatest words of wisdom that I could think of.
Was always thank you for sharing your experience because even though we both have gone through traumatic experiences, um, you've endured more trauma in my opinion than what I've gone through, especially with your dad having to adjust his lifestyle for things that we as everyday people take for granted. So
Yeah,
thank you
definitely.
for sharing that. And
Of course.
to all of you that are tuning in, whether you're listening or watching, we appreciate you for taking the time to learn a little more about, the reactions people have with different types of treatment and just taking the opportunity to listen to us talk during this time of awareness for head and neck cancer for this month of April. And we thank you as always for tuning in to another episode, and we'll see you next time.
Yes. Bye.
Bye.